There is no doubt that worthiness is important in our ability to rise up. But what exactly is worthiness? And how can we learn how to overcome the myriad of beliefs we carry about ourselves and our possibilities? Thais Sky's Worthy Women Rise is a 4-month signature program for emerging leaders, seekers, and visionaries who want to learn the tangible tools to dismantle the worthiness wound and take up greater space as a self-expressed woman. Because this is our time. Go to thaissky.com/worthy to get on the wait list. Doors open January 22nd. Again, that's thaissky.com/worthy. This episode of Reclaim is brought to you by Goodnight Darling Co. To succeed, we're advised and encouraged to get up earlier, go to bed later, work harder, and sacrifice our sleep. You deserve better than that. Sleep is not a luxury, it's a norm. And here at Goodnight Darling Co., we're bringing sleep back. Use code RECLAIM for 15% off. Simply go to www.goodnightdarling.co. Reclaim is a podcast for women, by women, on conversations that matter, with your host, Thais Sky. Together, we will explore the questions of what does it look like to reclaim our sovereignty, our worthiness, our voices as women in this messy world. No topics are barred as we offer roundtable discussions on life, spirituality, politics, and what it means to be a woman in the modern age. Let's do this. Hello, everybody. Thais Sky here, your host of Reclaim, where we have conversations that matter by women for women because women matter, and it's time for us to have these harder-hitting conversations. Today, I have with you Kate Anthony and Amy Ferris. We're going to dive into the complicated conversation of love. If there are two people that I feel like can begin to engage in this very, very wide conversation on love, it's Amy Ferris and Kate Anthony. These two women are dear friends, and it's a real treat to listen in on them have this conversation. But before we get to that conversation, I am in the middle right now of 21 Days of Worth. And by middle, I mean I literally just started today, which means when you're listening this Tuesday or later, I will have no longer been at the beginning. Anyway, the point is I started 21 Days of Worth Monday, January 8th, and I'm going for 21 days on Facebook Live on my personal Facebook page to share with you thoughts, stories, theories, anecdotes, belief systems, and all sorts of good conversations on worthiness and confidence and taking up greater space. If you don't know about 21 Days of Worth, obviously, it's not too late to just tune in on my personal Facebook page and listen to me every day. You can also just go to my website, thaissky.com/21 days. That's the number 2, the number 1, and then days, no space there. Just thaissky.com/21 days, where you can sign up to get the video compilation that I'll be sending out at the end of the 21 days with all of the videos in one place. So you can join me in either of two ways. You can also join me live, where you get to ask me questions and we get to engage in some real dialogue about worthiness. And speaking of worthiness, here's something that one of our listeners asked me last week. By the way, I don't know if you know this, but you can send me questions and I will answer them on my podcast. I know, it's a crazy concept, but I am not just a voice that you're listening to. I'm actually a human being. And if you send this human being questions, I will actually answer them on the podcast. You can just DM me, private message me on Instagram, Facebook. I will most likely get it and I will add it to my queue. And when it feels the right moment, I will answer your question. So here's a question I got from somebody this week. It's about the conversation of judgment. Now, this particular individual is struggling navigating judgment of self and judgments of others. And she understands that judgment is not a good thing, and she wants to change that, and she doesn't know how. So here's my response to that. And here's my thought on judgment as a whole. One, it's biology. Our brain is built to judge. That is how we've survived this long. And, we survived for a couple thousand years. I think a little bit more than that. A handful of thousands of years. So our brain knows something or other when it comes to survival. And judgment is one of the ways that we have survived up to this point. When we can judge whether a situation is good or bad, it's life-saving or death-saving. Death-saving? Life or death situation. It's important. It's important for us to be able to discern and distinguish and judge. That's why we are social creatures. That's why we thrive in community and being seen and heard by community. This is why it's so imperative for us to learn how to be together in a way that affirms. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is you're not going to be able to get rid of your judgment. I mean, sorry, to put it bluntly, judgment's not something you'll be able to, quote unquote, get rid of. And your attempts to getting rid of judgment is actually going to bite you in the butt. It's not going to work. So anyone who teaches you that they can help you remove judgment, that's not actually the point. The point is not to remove judgment. Judgment is the effect. We want to talk about the cause. We want to talk about what's going on deeper inside you that is eliciting within you a desire or a need, a biological desire to judge. Okay? So, for example, if you're being triggered by somebody and you're judging them and you're making all sorts of meaning about what they're doing, odds are there's something for you to investigate there, right? But if you're just judging someone's pair of shorts, that's just biology. That's you just noticing things and discerning things. And so if you then judge yourself for judging that person, again, that's an opportunity for you to explore what's coming up within you. Why do you feel the need to berate yourself? Why are you putting yourself up onto this expectation that you don't judge yourself? You know, this is all ego. Our ego attempts to make us seem perfect so that we can't get hurt. In my work, I call it the idealized self-image. It's an image that we've created of ourselves that we deeply believe that if we live up to this image, then we're going to have everything that we possibly want. And we do everything that we possibly can to try to live up to this image. But the problem is, one, the image changes. I'm sure you've noticed, sometimes your inner critic says that you're too loud. Sometimes the inner critic says that you're too quiet. Which one is it? Well, the idealized image changes based on what it thinks, what your ego, what your mind thinks needs to be in place for you to get the most amount of happiness and safety. So your idealized self-image is hooking you by expecting you to not be judgmental. And so anytime you notice yourself feeling like you should do this or should do that or I shouldn't be like this, or I shouldn't judge them, blah, 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 blah. Again, that's an opportunity for you to go deeper. When we say go inward, we're like, oh, well, where do we start? We start there. We start in the places where we feel kind of riled up, where we are expecting ourselves to be something that we aren't. That's the place to begin our inward journey. That's where we need to start to ask ourselves the deeper questions. Don't just get fixated on the fact that you're judging this person. Get deeper. Go deeper. Ask yourself, well, why? Why am I judging this person? Because judgment creates separation. And we know this mentally. We know that when we judge, we're separating ourselves from that person. But the answer then isn't to despise ourselves because we're in separation, but to ask us, why am I needing to feel safe here? Why am I feeling like I am unsafe and therefore I need to separate and therefore I am judging? And when we start to do that deeper inquiry, you'll notice is that there just is no longer that expectation that you won't judge, but also there won't be that voice inside your head telling you that you're a bad person for judging. And when that starts to dissipate, I should say, so does your desire to judge. And then pretty soon you don't judge. Or you do, and you're just not caught up in a tizzy around it. And, judgment and love actually go hand in hand. So this question ties in pretty beautifully to the conversation you're going to listen into with Kate and Amy about love and how to reclaim difficult love. And here's the dealio, bringing that love and kindness inward and finding ways to be with all of who we are is critical to our freedom, because we're not going to find freedom with self-hate. We're not going to find ourselves becoming who we truly want to be if on that journey we despised ourselves the entire way. So what I coach, what my zone of genius is teaching women on how to find ways to be kinder and nicer to themselves. And this is actually the most radical work that I found, because when we can create that space within ourselves to be gentler and kinder and more loving, then that frees up so much energy that we're spending on the judgment and self-hate, and liberates us to spend time doing other things. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool work, and it's accessible within all of us. Start by noticing what you're most judgmental of. Like, what do you find yourself judging the most? What really triggers you up? Odds are there's a split within you. You pushed a part of you away. And it's just a place to examine. Again, it doesn't mean that, you're broken and need to be fixed. It's just, this is the work of humanity, of noticing these things and asking ourselves the deeper question instead of taking it for face value. Yeah? All right. So that's what I've been thinking on this week. I've been thinking on that question. I'm excited to be bringing to you Kate and Amy. Let me go ahead and read their bios to you right now. We'll start with Amy. Amy Ferris is an author, editor, screenwriter, and playwright. Her memoir, Marrying George Clooney, Confessions from a Midlife Crisis, was adapted into an off-Broadway play at CAP 21 Theater Company in 2012. She has written for both TV and film. Her screenplay, Funny Valentines, was directed by Julie Dash and nominated for a Best Screenplay BET Award in 2000. She co-wrote the film Mr. Wonderful, directed by Anthony Minghella. Let's see. Her bio is just filled with incredible accolades. She's on the faculty at Omega Institute, where she co-facilitates a workshop called Women Writing to Change the World. Her morning post on Facebook, This Is What I Know, post-coffee, pre-wine, is pretty popular. Amy is amazing. Her thoughts are always so beautiful and in-depth, and I fell in love with her ability to put words together in her morning Facebook posts. Her relationship with her partner, Ken, is really, really, really inspiring. And like I said, if there's anyone that I know that can speak on love, it's Amy. And then we have Kate Anthony. Kate Anthony, CPCC, is a certified life coach who specializes in co-parenting, separation, and divorce. Kate's expertise lies in the areas of parenting, supporting children through divorce, creating co-parenting plans, and helping couples create a healthy split that keeps children at the center, not in the middle. Kate has trained with two of the top coach training organizations in the world, CTI, where she is certified in individual coaching, and CRR Global, where she was trained as an organization and relationship systems coach. Kate is an expert in interpersonal communication, co-parenting, and emotional intelligence. In addition to a private practice, Kate coaches Fortune 500 executives in communication, presentation skills, and emotional intelligence in collaboration with the global communications consultancy Working Voices. Okay. Bringing them both on now. While you're listening to this conversation on love, I want you to ask yourself a couple of questions, like, what does love mean to you? How do you receive love? Have you been able to love someone through a difficult time, like even when it was hard? Why or why not? Has someone been able to love you during difficult times, and how did that feel? And what does it look like for you to put that love front and center in your own heart? All right. Welcome, Kate and Amy, to Reclaim.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah. So, knowing both of your work in the world and both of your presence and what you speak to, I love the idea of what it looks like to reclaim love when it's hard. because I feel like so much of the conversation, especially when things are hard, is you should love, you should love, you should love. It shouldn't be hard, love and light and send your prayers, and that should be sufficient. But I find, and I'm sure you both have found as well, that it's not sufficient and that love is much more complicated than that. So I would love to just start to explore, what does it look like to love and be in that state? Or what does that concept even look like and mean when things get hard and when the last thing we want to do is love?
Oh, what a good question. Kate, I pick you. Go first.
I love you so much. I have so many thoughts and feelings about this. I mean, one of the things that I'm having to grapple with personally is not just how I love, but how I receive love, and how much harder that is for me than I ever realized. Right? That loving it's this two-way connection, and I think I'm really good at loving and sending it out. And in many ways, I think that's a defense mechanism against having to really fully be present in receiving it, and allowing it to land really deeply. And I think that is one of the challenges that we don't necessarily talk about. Like, not just how do we love, but how do we receive it?
I love that.
Right? Like, where's our landing place for that? So, I mean, that's sort of top of mind right now. And then, of course, in my work, I deal with the shifting landscape of love and relationships, right? And how I love my ex-husband differently now. I've been forced into a different level of love with this man who I could have, if I didn't have a kid with him, I would have divorced him and moved on like any other breakup, right? But I had to actually continue to expand my capacity to be with someone who, I hurt, he hurt me, we had resentments, right? We just have to keep expanding into it. And it never stops. What I always say about divorce is that it's never done. It's a living, breathing thing that is constantly evolving and stretching you beyond anything you could imagine. So those are my thoughts right now. My initial thoughts. Amy, I pick you now.
Thank you. Kate, that's, in hearing you and listening to you, the other day, Ken and I watched that new Robert Redford, Jane Fonda movie. I don't even remember what the name of it is, but there was just one line that, and she says to him, "You're still in love with her." And he said, "I'm in love with the memory of her." And I thought that was really an incredible, truthful line, because we always think that we stay in love, or that but we do hold on to the memory of something. And I find that to be, I thought that line was really exquisite. And, and love is really hard. I mean, whoever said it wasn't, was full of shit. I mean, love is really hard. It's hard. And divorce, I've never been divorced, Kate, but, when I read everything that you write, first of all, I have to say that you write about your ex-husband with such respect.
Yeah, thank you.
That it's very powerful when you read about somebody's ex-marriage or their divorce, and there's the respect that's still there, and maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's because you share a child. Is that possible? Or would you still feel the same way about him if you didn't have a son?
I don't think so. I think at the point at which the marriage ended, I could have walked away with a lot of anger and resentments and just kept it there. He could have just been,
right.
He could have been categorized in that moment of time for all time in my
right.
world. But because we share a child and we have this higher purpose, I had to work really hard, and we both did. We worked really hard to heal that, to deal with the resentments, to move forward from it so that we could show up. When we said to our son, we are now we will always be a family. We're just going to be a different kind of family. We meant it. And we meant that we will always be a family, and that family landscape shifts and changes. It was really painful for me when he got remarried and I was no longer his family, and then she was his family, right? But we have to expand to include that. And I think I don't think that had we had a child, had we had a higher purpose, you don't have a higher purpose when you break up with someone and you just move on from them. Right. But with a kid,
no, you don't.
But, I look at you and Ken and I think, my God, 25 years and the amount of stretching, and of course, love is hard. 25 years, and you guys are so madly in love. And what that must take to maintain that level of intimacy and connection over a quarter century, I can't even imagine.
It's an odd thing, because I remember when I was really young, and I would sit and I would look at my mom and dad, and I'd think, what do they talk about after all these years? It's like I was always astonished that there was a conversation continuing in a marriage. And I'm a handful, and so is Ken. We're both very different. I mean, I think that's something that is really, really what sustains us very much, is we're both incredibly different human beings. Ken is a granola nut boy. He's of the earth. He's a gardener. He's into separating plastics from paper. He's into recycling. He's like a 3 garbage can guy. I'm a 1 garbage can girl. And the truth is that we're very, very different. We are very different. And it's and the differences are what makes it very sexy. If we were the same, we would have never lasted 25 years.
Yeah.
Because I would have gotten really bored, and he would have gotten fed up. And that's the truth of it. And there are days that, we both think, why are we still here? But we work at it, and we work through it, and we apologize to each other a lot. So Eric Siegel was so wrong when he said love means never having to say you're sorry. He was so wrong. And really, truthfully, it is what the differences between us are what keep us. It's what makes it very sexy, and it is sexy.
Yeah.
It's very sexy. And honestly, if we were the same type of person, it would be over with.
So I feel like what I'm hearing here is this sense that real love is, or maybe not real love, but the love that lasts, the love that can overcome, is the love that asks us to expand our container. And that love can shift into mutual respect, right? That love can shift in different ways. But if we see love as a retraction, if we see love as just a sense of keeping us safe and in our small egoic bubbles, then it creates a rigidity that ultimately doesn't work. But if we can look at love as a call to expand our container, to be able to embrace the differences, to be able to swallow our pride and say, I'm sorry, right? To be able to look at the hardships in the world and still choose to be in that love, then it will last, and then it can change us and propel us and move us into something greater.
I 100% agree with that. And I think that goes forever. That covers sort of the expanse of love, right?
Yeah.
It covers.
Absolutely.
It covers the globalism of love, not just the romantic love, or right. It's all of it.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. And And I think it covers just about everything. I mean, I think that people have this misconception of what being in love is, what falling in love is, what love is. It isn't the same. And it's not, it is about having differences. It is about saying, I'm sorry. It is about saying, wow, I don't know any human being who does not want to grow or expand.
Yeah.
And I think that the way that you just put that was really quite exquisite. Love is about expanding. Life is about expanding. And when we keep ourselves really small and really contained and really afraid, and, when we keep ourselves, within the lines, everything stays small. You can't love enough when you're that way.
Yeah.
You don't have the capability to love more.
Or I would say almost at all, right? Because I mean, the truth about love is that I think initially it's about our own feelings, right? It's like, oh, I have these feelings for this person, and it's about our own experience. But as it grows and expands, it has to not be about us anymore. It has to be about the other person. It has to be about the give and the take, and the and the respect, and the apologizing, and the taking responsibility, which is all about the other. I feel like, I'm not sure if I can eloquently describe this, but I have this sense that, the initial period of, quote, falling in love is all about how we feel, right? All about the feelings that we have. And it really is beyond that romantic infatuation period that you start to get to know the other person. And then it's like, oh, wait, yay or nay beyond that, right? And then it's a constant choosing of the other person. It's no longer about choosing my feelings. It's about choosing the other person. And I love what you said about saying you're sorry.
Yeah.
I am constantly apologizing to my ex-husband, in particular. He and I both, whether it's about a parenting thing or, a screw up that we did with our kid, like that we're like, hey, Emmett said that you said this or did that. It kind of hurt his feelings. Oh my gosh. And, I'm so sorry I did that to our son. I'm so sorry. Let me take responsibility. Let me talk to him. Or, just various things, whatever it is, we are constantly apologizing to each other,
Yeah, and to add on to that, Kate, I don't apologize to Ken for being me. I apologize to him for hurting him.
Yes.
I will never apologize for who I am, because I'm an emotional creature. If you had seen me during menopause, you would have thought, oh my God, this woman is going to end up in the Women's Correctional Center. But, there are two things here, and listening to you, and I think that this is like super vital, is that one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about lately, and Kate, and this is the honest truth, that's why I absolutely adore you to bits. The piece that you wrote, I Pick Me, has stayed with me from the moment I read it, okay? It was like one of the most every single human being needs to read that piece. It is like, it's so powerful, it is so potent, it is so visceral. The thing that I have been thinking about since I read that is, why is it so very difficult for women and men? Why is it so difficult for all of us to love ourselves enough?
Yeah.
It's almost like, and I think about like my mom, and I think about how she raised me and how she taught me. My mother taught me about love, and it was not a good thing.
Yeah.
Because how she taught me about love, it was conditional. It was always, if I did something good, she loved me. Right. If I did something she didn't like, oh my God, forget it. And everything, and love scared me. Love was about fear. Love was about abandonment. Love was about not being good enough. Love was about being left. And up until the time that I met Ken, that was how I dealt in my relationships. That was the foundation that I jumped from.
Yeah.
The fear of being abandoned. So what I would do is I would do everything humanly possible, plus some, to make sure that I held on to the guy. It wasn't even that I loved the guy. It was that I didn't want him to leave me.
Yep.
And then I had that moment where it was like, oh my God, you know, I would not even choose these men if I was sane. Mm-hmm. So, the thing about love for me right now is I want people to learn to love their own lives.
Yeah.
It's almost like we don't know how. We don't know what it's like to be in love with ourselves.
Yeah.
One of the most profound moments that I had when I was younger, this was around my first ever heartbreak. You know, the first one is always the hardest, I'd say, just because we give ourselves completely away, no boundaries, right, to our partner. And so I was 18 years old and I had fallen in love with a boy and he was the one. And we were going to, you know, live our lives happily ever after. Well, needless to say, that did not happen. And I remember having a session with my therapist and I was like, I miss that love. I miss that love that I had for him. And she showed me how that love always exists within me. That person just brought it out.
Yeah.
And I can choose now to bring it out for myself or bring it out for circumstance or bring it out for, you know, people that we have a hard time loving at that moment and to be able to apologize. And from that moment on, I recognized and realized that all of our emotions are already within us. People just bring it out and we always get to then say, you know, and connect with that deeper part within us. And so I love that what you said, Amy, about, you know, how we've got to learn how to love our own lives. And I think for those who are listening, we're like, well, how? Well, you already know what love is. You just now have to invite it into your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And right, I think that we're in this interesting place, right, where people are constantly saying, you know, especially to people who don't have love or people who are single.
I am so glad that you're saying this, Kate. Oh, you read my mind. I'm so glad that you're saying this because that was going to be the very next thing if you didn't say anything.
Yeah, like people were constantly saying, and I think it's this love and light thing, right?
Yes.
There's this like, well, you just have to love yourself first.
Yes, love yourself first.
Love yourself, which is like, okay, yes, and right. And here's something that I will say, and Amy, I'd be curious to know if this is your conversation. Or if this is your experience as well. I have learned to love myself through the eyes of others.
Yes.
I have not learned to love myself sitting in my bubble. Like, sure, tons of work, tons of therapy, tons of personal development work. Absolutely. Are we explicit?
Yes, we are allowed to be explicit.
Okay. And
oh, good.
Yeah, I noticed Amy holding back. So I feel like, here's the thing. I have learned to love myself through people like Amy showing me a mirror and saying, this is who you are. I've learned to love myself through my boyfriend saying to me, I wish that you could see yourself the way that I see you, and forcing me to expand to receive the amount of love that he has for me, right? And it's a constant reawakening. It's a constant awakening to myself going, okay, this is how people see me. Okay, this is what I have to hold. Oh, and being with that and letting that sort of sit and ferment inside me, right? And I don't think that I get to do that without the lens of other people reflecting it back to me. I just don't think that we get to go on a retreat and sit on a rock and say namaste until we love ourselves and then get to go back to the world and be loved. I don't think it works that way, frankly. I think we have to risk. I think we have to put ourselves out there. We have to be vulnerable and we have to listen to what other people see in us and reflect back in order to find that love within ourselves. That's what Amy, do you feel like you love yourself more through your 25 years with Ken? Was it an unfolding process?
something, I do. I also, yes, I absolutely do. I think that when he looks at me, when I'm in a place where I'm not feeling good about myself or having a really hard time, and he looks at me or he holds me or he inspires me, yeah, absolutely. I'm with you, Kate. It's every person we rub up against in our life is somebody, whether it's good or bad. I mean, with my mother, all the things that my mother ever did, and what I also am coming to terms with too is that my mother didn't know any better. She did what she thought, or she did the love card the way that she thought it should be dealt.
Yeah.
She didn't have the capacity to love my father and her children. She only had the capacity to love one at a time, or love my father and then choose one of my brother or I to, and it's no wonder that our family life completely imploded. Yeah. It's no wonder that my brother and I don't talk. Estrangement does not come out of a good family. It comes out of people not knowing how to communicate, people not knowing how to love each other, no matter what.
Yeah.
And I do think the thing about love for me is everything that my mother did that hurt me, that was based on conditional love, I swore I would never do that to another person.
Yeah.
I think when people love us bad, that's also something we learn from big time.
Yes.
Because, love is really hard. It is really hard. And Kate, you know that better than most people. I mean, how you, with your boyfriend and how you worked through that and how, that's magic. That isn't just, we worked through, you got to see stuff about yourself that you didn't want in your life either.
Yeah. Yep.
And when we're lucky enough to have people in our life, whether it's the men that we love or the women that we love or the friends that we love or the children that we love, if we're lucky enough, they're also going to teach us how to be better humans.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And better humans doesn't mean that, I would rather somebody call me out on my shit than talk about me behind my back. Absolutely. Or no longer talk to me because they don't want to have a confrontation. That kind of crap does not, that's the stuff that makes people super afraid of love.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like it's a spiral. It's a dynamic dance, the love with self and the love of others. And I feel that every potent relationship, friendship, partnership where I was reflected, my immense goodness came when I felt the most undeserving. It's like they gave me that foundation. But in order for me to sustain my relationship with my partner, we've been together for 4 years, and sustain my long-term friendships, it required me to dig into my love of myself and not bring the self-loathing and because I think that that's what love does too in partnerships. It does bring out our worst. It brings out our immense fears and paranoia and anxiety. And just like what Amy said, all of our shit from childhood gets reflected right back into our face in our great loves. And I think if we don't use that and leverage that as love for self, then we'll spiral into self-sabotage and we can't handle it, and we'll push people away and we'll lose the capacity to be in that connection.
Yeah. And I feel like being able to look at that stuff, right? Because it really is, it's going to come up. And it's how you're going to be with it that's really the most important, right? Because we can run scared when the ugliness of ourselves starts to bubble to the surface. We can put the lid on it and run away, or we can go, okay.
You captured that sentiment so perfectly there.
It's very true.
I said to a friend recently, I was like, I'm so tired of turning over rocks and seeing just all of the gross, the worms and the fetid nastiness that I have to oh God, now I have to clean up that. Okay. Just for me, that's what life is about. It's turning over more rocks, finding more of the ugly shit, cleaning it up, examining it, getting familiar with it and rolling around in it for a bit. And and I don't ever want to stop that process, but man, sometimes it can be so exhausting.
That's very true.
And taking this, I would love to know both of your opinions. And, Kate, you do so much work with women who are divorcing and going through that split. What do you find to be the greatest challenge when it comes to maintaining that sense of respect? I guess what I'm trying to say is, what have you seen to be true for why we tend to shut down and shut people out and go into, I imagine a little, what's that animal that has the quills and then they just pop
porcupine.
Up? Yes.
Porcupine, yeah.
Right. We go into that porcupine mode the minute we start to sense that we're too hurt to handle this. And how can we start to move through and navigate that with a little more ease and grace?
It's a great question. I think that, every situation is different, right? There are some marriages that are, purely toxic and should never have been, or what have you, right? There are abusive situations. I have clients that I don't recommend trying to navigate a respectful separate split from, but I do, I think the common thread for everything, for all of this is a level of codependency recovery, a level of finding your voice, finding your own voice, women find, as Amy always says, writing their lives, women getting in touch with their authentic voices and being able to set boundaries that are healthy and that work for them. And sometimes that means putting their quills down and kind of being more vulnerable in the situation. Sometimes it means keeping them up and being protective and setting protective barriers. I work with a lot of women on deciding whether or not they should stay or go. And one of the surprising stats about second marriages is that 75% of second marriages fail. And I believe, yeah, right. And I think that is because people don't bother to do the work. They think that the problem was the other person. And so they're just going to get rid of that one and get a new one. And so, and unfortunately it doesn't work that way. And the statistics prove it. So when I work with women to decide whether or not they should leave, I really work with them to do their own recovery work first. I don't advocate for one way or the other. I do a lot of education about sort of gender differences and what it's like to be in a relationship with, what expectations and the history of, the way that we live now in these single family dwellings and the expectations that we put on the other person. And I also do a lot of work on relationship inventory recovery work, taking responsibility, seeing where, taking all your resentments and then figuring out where you're responsible so that you get a clearer picture. And I don't let anyone, unless it's an egregious, obvious choice, I really don't advocate for people leaving until they've done that work, because a lot of the healing and growth can be done there. And it might not be that this marriage needs to end, and it might be, but Lord knows you should do that work anyway so that you don't take it into the next one, I don't know if that answers your question.
I think that was, I don't know either, but I think that was absolutely brilliant. And Amy, because you write so much.
I am not even going to follow that.
Well, but I want to know, Amy, based on your work and what does that mean to write? What did you say, Kate? Writing your lives or writing your life?
Yes,
Yes.
Amy's brilliant workshops. Amy, I'm going to let you talk about your brilliance.
You know, one of the things that I've been advocating for many, many, many years, almost 25 years now, almost the same amount of time, is for women to awaken to their greatness. And that has been a very big mission of mine. And I think a lot of it has to do with me awakening to mine, me understanding that I don't need anything externally to be great or to have that in my life. You know, it's not something I can buy. It's not something I can rent. It's not something that I get from, but awakening to our greatness. Every single woman has the capacity and the possibility to do that. And every woman owes it to herself to do that. And so I do these workshops, and Kate has come to one, and she's going to be coming to the next one. And it's about women awakening to their greatness and writing, both the WR and the RI, writing their life. It's, Kate, you were just talking about not advocating for, toxic, right? That
Yeah.
You're not going to, I think that that's something, if we look at the world, I mean, I don't know if you even wanted to get into this topic, but I think that so many women stay in awful relationships, whether it's emotionally toxic or physically horrific or psychologically damaging.
Yeah.
Women stay in bad relationships out of fear, out of guilt, out of shame, out of not knowing any better, out of feeling that they don't know. I mean, most women that I know stay because they don't know how to make their life better.
Yep.
We weren't, and I think that if we rewind it, it does come down to self-love. I mean, I was in a very abusive relationship, wholly abusive relationship for 5 years. And it wasn't until he wrapped his fucking hands around my throat and I caught the image of that in the full-length mirror. It was that I saw what he was doing to me. Literally. It wasn't, it was like one of those moments where I caught it. I caught it, the image in a full-length mirror. And that was it. That was the end of it. I mean, I ran out of there as fast as I could, and I never turned back. And that, I do want to say, was the very beginning of me learning how to love my own life.
Yep.
That was really, really an important turning point for me.
I just want to sit with that because I feel that women are taught at such an early age to disrespect our own consent and our own boundaries because they were
absolutely
disrespected, that we then don't even know what appropriate, healthy love behavior is, and we start to justify why it's okay and why it's not a big deal and why, but at least we're getting this, and then it turns into something that's so toxic and soul shattering.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And so
absolutely.
Can we blow this up real quick? And because we've been talking a lot about intimate relationships.
Let's do that.
Let's blow it up.
Let's blow it up real quick.
I meant zoom out. Like,
yes, I know what you meant, right? You want to take a meta view is what you mean, right?
Yes. Yeah. And what does this look like in terms of our relationship with humanity and our relationship with one another? There's so many toxic things going on in the world. I would say that, toxic masculinity is the partner of women, whether we want it or not, because of our culture. And how do we begin to navigate that in a way that is healthy for us? I curious where you're going to go with this, Kate.
Me? Well, I mean, here's the thing. I think that, and I do think that I'm very much in agreement with Amy, that the more that we awaken to our own greatness, the more that we do our own work on ourselves to strengthen our cores and our foundations, the stronger we'll all be. I mean, I just think in general, not just women, just all of humanity. You know, I truly believe that some of the greatest sources of hate is this fear that we have of others and ourselves, right? That we don't do the work. We're not self-aware. We're not emotionally intelligent overall, right? As beings, you know, that that, you know, oh God, I mean, I could go on all day, right? That for me, it really is about doing the work on ourselves, doing deep work on ourselves, exploring what we're truly afraid of, being okay to be with our fears, being okay to be with uncomfortability, with discomfort, and all of the things that we like to run away from and shy away from. And the more we can be with that in ourselves, the more we can be with that in others, and we can actually just be in the world, in community. That's how I've solved this problem.
Okay, Kate, just say that last part one more time. One more time.
That the more that we can be with the ugliest parts of ourselves, the most difficult parts of ourselves, and be in that discomfort, the more capacity we have to be with that in others.
I completely agree. I think that's spot on.
Yeah.
That is it. You know, and we're really super afraid to do that.
Yep.
We're very afraid to do that. You know, it's almost like we're afraid what we would find out. You know, it's kind of like we keep ourselves in a closet. We keep ourselves, you know, those pieces of us that, you know, and I think pretty much the truth is, and Kate, I completely agree with you, and I don't even want to say anything because what you said was so fucking perfect, but I think the things that we don't like about ourselves, the jagged pieces and the crazy ass pieces and the shards and the crazy glued together pieces, those are the pieces that everyone has.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's like, I always say this to people, you know, people always go, oh my God, Oprah Winfrey, you know, but it's who she became out of all of the damage that was done to her.
Yeah.
That's what makes it extraordinary.
Yes.
It's not that she's this like unbelievably powerhouse, you know, crazy ass, amazing Black woman. It's that all the stuff that she went through as a woman, as a girl, having this baby, you know, all of the trauma that she took all of that and used it so that other people could have empathy, so that other people can have, you know, and I think that about any human being, any one of us who takes every single thing that was done to us, that hurt us, that caused us unbearable suffering, that, you know, that made us, you know, crawl into a ball or curl in a hole, or, you know, all of that stuff. That's the stuff that makes us pretty fucking amazing.
Yeah.
It isn't that we write a book and it's not that we get a publishing deal. It's that we got 900 rejections and didn't give up.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's not that you have this wonderful man in your life, Kate. It's that you fought and worked for it really hard.
Really hard.
You know, you were willing to like look inside of yourself and say, okay, I am not going to do this again. I'm going to make this work. I'm going to work at it. Same thing with me and Ken. You know, I think that's people are really afraid. You said it. People are afraid to look at the ugly parts, but it's the ugly stuff. It is the ugly stuff that people go, oh my God, I do that also.
And I also think that it's being unafraid of looking at it's looking at the ugly parts. I feel like the hate in the world, right, is looking at the ugly and pushing it outwards, right? It's projecting what you don't want to look at in yourself. I just think of all of the former white supremacists who come forward and say, like, and then I met a Black man, and then I met a Jewish person, and I sat with him and I got to know him, and I realized that everything I said was wrong, and I had to look at myself, right? Like,
absolutely.
The way that the world changes is in community with others, and is in learning about others and being curious and learning that, and then they have to look at themselves, and then they have to go, so what was I actually afraid of?
It's the illusion of other, right?
Yeah,
when we can see people as just an other, we can project all of our stuff to them. But once we become intimate with them, we realize that there is no other, there is no separation. There truly is just humanity. And for me, I found that in my journey of claiming my own innate racism and seeing my own privilege as a white woman, the more that, because that is an illusion of separation that we are, pushed on by society. Many of us not even knowing that we have that. But when I started to claim that as my own, I started to see people of color in a whole new level of respect and love and sisterhood and brotherhood and this sense of right, how illusory it really is that we are all separate. You see that? So it wasn't because I just said love and light and we're all the same and we love each other.
Wow.
It's because I reclaimed the part of me that believed in the separation, even though it wasn't my innate belief. It was a belief that's pushed on me by, our white supremacist culture. But when we can say yes to that,
yes, I love that. Yeah,
we can actually see humanity, and from that place of seeing and love, we can then do something about it instead of just preaching about it.
Yes, exactly. I love that. The only way that we can be at one is if we start to understand our separateness inside of ourselves.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that that's the whole point of this conversation when we really get down to it, is it doesn't matter if we're talking about a romantic relationship or a relationship with your next door neighbor. It's all the same thing. It's all bringing our own stuff up. It's all an opportunity for us to deepen our understanding of ourselves so we can deepen our connection with others and not push anything away.
But what you're talking about is intimacy.
Yeah.
And 9 out of 10 times people are absolutely afraid of intimacy.
Yep.
It's not about, it really, if somebody asked me what makes my relationship with Ken really work, it's that we're very intimate with each other. And I don't mean sexually. I mean that we share, we tell each other what we're going through. The intimacy is, and this is where people get really confused. Like most people, confuse intimacy with sex. It isn't. Sex is not about intimacy. I mean, it is on a physical level, but most of us aren't even intimate with our own lives. Most of us are afraid to look at the truth of something. And that's something that, I've written about it a lot, and, I've read about, some other folks have, really tackled that. We don't even understand what being intimate is.
No.
And Kate, you're very intimate. You're like you and Charlotte, and, there's a bunch of, Linda Schreier, there's this, we happen to be very intimate women.
Yeah.
We share the good and the bad. We write about the ugly stuff that we go through. We're not there's an authenticity to it. It's not like how some people like share their shit and you go, wow, that does not feel right, or that doesn't feel truthful. You know, and I remember years and years ago when I was writing Marrying George Clooney, and Krista, who is my publisher and my editor, Krista Lyon, said, you're not being intimate enough on the page. And I had no idea what she meant. And then she said to me, you need to be honest. You need to write the absolute truth. And I, in that moment, gave up every bit of withholding. I decided, yes, I'm going to write the intimate truth. And that, I think, when you read something that somebody wrote, or you meet somebody, or you know if there's an intimacy, you know if they are going to allow you to come into their life, you know when somebody keeps you at arm's length, you know when you're reading something, if it's absolutely authentic and truthful, you know that. Or if I've read a few memoirs where you read it and you go, that doesn't feel truthful to me, or they're withholding, or they're holding back. And that's an intimacy. That's about intimacy. And I think that most humans are very afraid of letting people know the truth of who they are.
I feel your words, and it's reminding me of, when we see these Facebook posts by people who say, this is a vulnerable share, and then you read it and it doesn't feel vulnerable at all. No,
it doesn't.
And it's lacking that real intimacy with themselves. And then maybe they feel like they're being vulnerable because, that's where they're at. But I can sense that they're not quite there yet. And so I feel like what you're saying, Amy, really rings true to me. And it feels deep in my bones that we can sense each other's intimacy and we can sense where we're at. Yeah.
It's interesting. I get a lot of private messages from people saying, you're so brave. I love watching what you post on Facebook. You're so brave. And to me, it doesn't feel brave, first of all. And secondly, I want to say, like, I want to invite them to do the same, to be the same in their own lives, right? And they've often will say, you give me courage to be more vulnerable in my life, and that's sort of the greatest gift. I want my vulnerability and my intimacy to invite other women to do that, to be that for themselves in their own lives. Because if it doesn't do that, then like, what's the point? Right? Like, it feels that it's a little masturbatory or whatever. But if it doesn't invite other women to be able to, when I get those private messages for people saying like, thank you, because you've really inspired me and helped me to, be this in my own life. I'm like, yes, good. Because otherwise it's pointless.
I think that bravery is just a fearlessness of your own shit.
Yeah.
I feel like what's really happening there, because when you are not afraid of your own stuff, there is no fear.
Yeah.
The other piece of it too, it's kind of like we don't even understand what it means, like to step into our own life. We don't even, it's, I think that it's time for all of us to just put down, it's like just to put down the armor, to the scaffolding. Take the scaffolding down. Let people see the building. It's, I think it's so important for all of us as we grow up and grow older and grow wiser and live in this world, because the world is terrorizing right now. It's so frightening. It's,
yes.
It is. It's a very scary place. And it's scary, and for people who are triggered, for lack of a better word, by, any kind of mental health issue, whether it's depression or anxiety. The world that we're living in is scary. It's very, very scary because it feels like, you can't shove the cork back in to the bottle. You just can't,
No.
And I think we all need to stand up. We all need to be seen and be heard and voice and not be afraid to step out of the shadow and not be afraid to step over the line and not be afraid to get out from, the end of the line and start a new line. We've been so afraid our whole lives to be who we are and what we're meant to be. And we keep ourselves small and tidy, and it doesn't work anymore. It does not work anymore. And, and the other piece of it too is that we always say, love will win. Love is only going to win if we do it better.
Yeah.
You can't win the way we're, love has not won.
No. No, exactly.
And I'm a big advocate of that, and so are you, Kate. And it's, we always, love is going to win, but love is fucking hard, and you can't do love the same way and think I'm going to get a different result. You got to do it different, and we really need to love different. We need to love better. We need to be more compassionate and empathetic with our own lives. We need to forgive ourselves first for the shit that we did that we didn't know better about. There's something that it's time for us to change how we do love, how we perceive love, how we manage love, what we think love is. Why it's so scary to love ourselves. What do we think is going to happen if we love ourselves? Do we think that no one else will love us? Are we not enough? It's like, this is like stuff that I kind of feel like I really want to understand all of this now.
Yeah.
Like why is loving ourselves not like the coolest thing in the fucking world? Why is it like, forget same-sex marriage. Why can't we have same-self marriage? Why is it not okay to love ourselves?
Right. I have a part of an answer for that a little bit, right? Which is one of the things that I've been struggling with in my own therapy is the idea that, like, for me, self-love feels narcissistic. I'm constantly striving against.
That's it.
Right. I'm constantly striving against being not being too self-involved, not being narcissistic, not, you know what I mean? And when people talk about self-love, my first response is like, ew, like, until we look at like underneath that, right? Like that actually it's the greatest gift to the world. It's actually the opposite of narcissism, but that's where I've always gotten caught up.
Yeah.
That's absolutely, bingo, what you just said. That's it.
And I feel like so much of that is so culturally ingrained within us that, our role is to be for others. And going back full circle to where we started, it is why it's so hard for us to receive love, I think, because in many ways, it's been ingrained in us that we have to be giving and thinking about others and putting other people first and being nice and being kind and shutting up and playing small to make sure that everybody else is comfortable before we are comfortable.
Yeah.
Oh, ladies, I feel like we can continue this conversation forever and ever. Both of you are so wise and brilliant. And unfortunately, we do have to wrap it up for the sake of
our audience.
our audience. But I just want to ask one last question. Do you have any final thoughts about reclaiming love even when it's hard?
I think reclaiming love really starts with ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that all of this, if anything that came for me, listening to both of you, is in order to reclaim love, we have to reclaim our own life. I think that's for me what I really believe that. It's kind of like waking up and going, oh my God, I'm going to marry me today.
Mm.
I am going to devote, I'm going to have a relationship with me. And I think that's how we reclaim it. I think we've tried everything else, including, jumping through a hoop and all kinds of stuff. And I think it's vitally important that we fall in love with ourselves. And I want to get on that train.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Amy.
You're welcome. Kate.
I think I 100% agree with Amy that it does begin with ourselves, but I think that it's, we say that, we give a lot of lip service to what that means. And I think that we need to do better. We need to love better, right? Love will only win when we do it better, says Amy Ferris. And I think that begins with us, that learning to love ourselves is not something that's just this sort of thing that we can, this meme that we can toss out.
Yes. It requires work.
It requires some really hard work, and it's a lot more complicated than I think.
Love and light.
Than love and light. Exactly. Let's leave it there. Yep.
Thank you both so much for sharing your heart with us today. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much.
Thank you for having us on.
Amy, Kate, and I had a lot of thoughts around love, and now we want to hear yours. Come hang out with us on Facebook. You can find Amy at amy.ferris, Kate at Coach Kate Anthony, and me at I am Thais Sky. And if you want to check out more of Amy's work, go to marryinggeorgeclooney.com. To learn more about Kate's work, go to kateanthony.com. And as always, you can learn more about me and my work at thaissky.com. See you next week.